and welcome to 𝗍𝗵𝗂𝗂𝐿𝑇hyHouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today I'm going to answer a viewer question, and this is about using a moisture meter, how to know when to water once you've gotten the moisture reading. How do I know when to water if part of it is dry, part of it is wet, it's wetter down here, etc. So William Lane asked, I am confused by videos that say just to stick your finger into the top inch of the soil to test the moisture versus using my moisture meter that can go in 12 inches into the soil, but it can be dry an inch deep, but it's still moist 6 inches deep or more. So basically, when do I water or do I not water? What do I do? I do have other videos on using moisture meters, which answer a lot of questions as well. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the depth-wise, how far to put the moisture meter in and when to know when to water. I will put a link below for any videos I mention in this video. Okay, so how far down to put the moisture meter when you're testing, right? Because as William mentioned, well, if I'm in the first top inch, it says it's dry, but then I go lower, then it's wet, so what do I do? And another thing to address is the finger thing. Okay, an inch down with your finger. That's a very common, right? It's just, first of all, it doesn't really work that well for bigger pots. It sort of works for smaller pots, but it's kind of awkward, and you get your finger all dirty, and it's just kind of a pain, and it will only work for your smaller pots too. So it is useful to use a moisture meter. You do need to be careful with them. Don't drop them because they do break pretty easily, but they are fairly inexpensive, and they're pretty effective for helping you determine water readiness, especially when you have the bigger pots that you cannot stick your finger. I would not be able to get my finger all the way down this pot to find out what's going on down there, right? So they are very helpful in that regard. Okay, so this plant, I'm going to put it, I know this plant is pretty dry. So when I put it in at 1 inch, it is showing in the red, and I will go ahead and zoom in for you there so you can see that. So as you can see, it is in the red. And this, by the way, is a 𝗍𝗫𝗂𝗃. This is a 4-foot tall 𝗍𝗫𝗃 in this bigger pot, and this is a little 𝗍𝗫𝗃, a foot and a half tall 𝗍𝗫𝗃 in this smaller pot. Okay, so as you can see, it's red. I'm going to put it down further. It's still red. Over here, you always want to test various areas in the soil. So do a good thorough sampling. Still red. This plant is definitely in need of watering. It does need a repotting, which is one of the reasons why it's drying out so quickly on me, because I did just recently water it. So anyway, that is showing definitely this plant needs water. Okay, well, let's say that if I put it in the inch and it was dry, but then I put it down further and it was sopping wet, now what? What do I do? Is it dry? Is it wet? What do I do, right? And that's pretty much is William's question. Okay, so what you want to do, rule of thumb, is you want to go down 1/3 of the way, and whatever is happening in this first third is what you want to react to in terms of watering. So you can even using this, and they do make, by the way, longer moisture meters. So I will put a link below for moisture meters. I will put a link below for any videos I mentioned in this video as well, including my playlist on how to use moisture meters. Okay, so this one is fortunately long enough for this pot to be able to determine 1/3 of the way down. So where would the moisture meter need to go for about 1/3 of the pot? You can eyeball it. So so this would be about 1/2-ish, so about 1/3 would be right about there. So kind of eyeball it on your moisture meter there, and then go ahead and stick it into that 3rd mark. When you stick it into that 3rd mark, read the moisture meter. So whatever is going on in this first third is what you want to react to. It is dry, I'm going to water. So I would do that even if it said it was moist down here, I'm still going to water, because the thing is, you don't want those top roots to dry out too much, because the plant can die from that, can have a lot of drought stress. A lot of times these top roots, a lot of times in a lot of pots, more of the roots are in the top part, in the top a third to half of the pot. And even if there are more roots down here, those roots are attached to the roots up here. So that's why you want to pay attention to this first third. So same thing with this plant here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to figure out what a third is on the side of the pot here. And so it's about there, pretty much. Eyeballing it on here. Then I'm sticking it into that point. Okay, so this plant has recently been watered. I've got to get her hair out of the way here. And we can go ahead and zoom in for you so you can see that she is, well, that's pushing it. It's on the border there of like between 4 and 3, and that's usually when you want to water. But I'm going to check other areas in this plant, and you have a good mark when you first start to know where to go to. Okay, now I went down a third, about a third right now, and it's showing moist. So I'm going to do, you want to do a representative sampling. I'm going to do another area down to that third point. This is showing 4, 5. So this plant is not quite ready. But it is getting there. I'm going to do one more right here. Yeah, and it's, now see, I do one more right there, and it's pretty wet in that one little area there. And that was a third, see about, yeah, that was a third down. So this plant isn't quite ready. It's got some moisture pockets in there. Maybe there's a little bit of dry there, but it's not overall dry in that top third like it definitely is in this one here. So I'm going to wait a few days on this one and then test it again. This one will be watered immediately after this video because it really needs it. I was kind of waiting and letting it dry out a little bit so we could do this video as well. So the thing to keep in mind, as mentioned, is how the third down, and also you want to do the representative sampling throughout the soil, to do 3, 4, 5 different places depending on how big the plant is to give you a really good indication. Generally speaking, for most houseplants, you want it to be on the 4 when you water, because the 4 is still some moisture in it. The 3 is pretty dry. 2 and 1 is really dry. So, but the 3 in the red zone is dry, so you don't want it to get, for most houseplants, to get to that 3. So you want to get it when it's at the 4, when it's just getting ready to get to the 3 and get dried out. That's for most houseplants. Now there are succulents, cacti, you would want them to be in the 2, 1 before you water. And then for things that really like moisture, like the maidenhair fern, you want a 5 or a 6 on that. So it's going to depend on the plant, but rule of thumb from average 4. And that would be then 4 within this area, the first third of the plant, and then it's time to water. So there you go. Hopefully that answers William's question and your question about this watering. And it as mentioned, it can get a little bit confusing, and hopefully that will help clear up some of the confusion. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.